The worn leather of the armchair sighed as Mark sank into its familiar embrace. He rubbed his temples, the faint scent of lavender from Emily's usual pre-bed bath clinging to the air. 20 years. 20 years of early morning coffee shared in comfortable silence, of whispered jokes at crowded parties, of evenings curled up with a book and a glass of wine. Yet tonight, the silence felt oppressive, the armchair unwelcoming. It wasn't the late nights at work Emily had started claiming. Mark, a creature of routine, understood the demands of a promotion. No, it was the lingering scent of a cologne he didn't recognize, a stray blonde hair on the bathroom counter, a hushed phone call cut short with a frantic shove of him into their bedroom. Denial, initially a comforting shield, now felt like a flimsy curtain flapping in a hurricane. Sleep was a stranger that night. When the first sliver of dawn peeked through the blinds, Mark rose, a leaden weight settling in his gut. He showered, the hot water failing to wash away the chill that had crept in. Downstairs, the kitchen was bathed in the golden glow of the rising sun. Emily sat at the table, sipping coffee, a magazine fanned open in front of her. "Morning," she said, her voice bright. "Morning," he replied, his voice a rough rasp. He couldn't look at her. Not yet. He grabbed a mug, the familiar clink against the counter a jarring note in the tense silence. "Everything all right? You look rough." Her brow furrowed in concern, or was it feigned? "Just a bad night," he mumbled, forcing down a mouthful of scalding coffee. He needed proof. Concrete evidence that would shatter the fragile image of their life together. The following days were a blur of stolen glances at her phone, covert searches through her laptop history, a gnawing guilt at his own betrayal of their trust. Then, on a Thursday afternoon, as he was leaving work, his phone buzzed. An unknown number, a hesitant "hello," was met with a nervous chuckle. "Hi, Em, just checking in. See you tonight at the usual place, okay?" The world tilted on its axis. It was a man's voice. Recognition flared, sharp and unwelcome. It was David, from Emily's book club. David, with the easy smile and the suggestive compliments she'd brushed off as harmless flirtation. The following hour stretched into an eternity. Fury battled with disbelief in his gut. When Emily arrived home that evening, a bouquet of lilies in hand, her smile seemed unbearably smug. "Mark, how lovely to see you home early. Date night," she chirped, oblivious to the storm brewing in his eyes. He held up his phone, the text message glaring accusingly at her. The color drained from her face, replaced by a mask of defiance. "You went through my phone?" "Don't play dumb, Emily," he snapped, his voice raw with betrayal. He told her about the call, the cologne, the hair. Each word was a shard of glass piercing the illusion of their marriage. The initial denial gave way to a torrent of tears. A story of loneliness, of feeling unseen, of a spark missing. Each tear was a burning ember on his heart. Had he been so blind? They talked, or rather, she talked, and he listened. The man on the phone, it seemed, was just an outlet, a fleeting fantasy. Their lives, she admitted, had become a comfortable rut. But the betrayal, the lie, it echoed in the air, a chasm now separating them. The following days were a dance of unspoken words and heavy silences. The shared breakfast table felt like a battlefield. He tried to salvage it, to understand the cracks in their seemingly perfect facade. But the more they talked, the more they realized the disconnect had been simmering for years, obscured by the comfort of routine. One evening, as they sat in the living room, the remnants of a takeout dinner forgotten on the coffee table, Emily broke the silence. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice small. He didn't have an answer. Did they try to rebuild? Was there anything left to rebuild upon? The love, the trust, were they casualties of complacency? Days bled into weeks. Neither spoke of the future. Mark slept on the guest bed, the silence deafening. Emily continued working, her face etched with sadness. One Saturday morning he found her packing a suitcase. "Where are you going?" he asked, his voice devoid of the anger that had simmered within him for weeks. "To my sister's," she said, her eyes red-rimmed. "I need some space." He watched her leave, the slamming of the car door a final punctuation mark on a chapter of their lives. The silence left by Emily's absence was deafening. The house, once a haven of shared laughter and comfortable routines, felt like a museum dedicated to a life that was no more. Mark wandered from room to room, his fingers tracing the worn edges of photo frames, each picture a memory now tinged with a bittersweet ache. He tried to work, but every document, every spreadsheet, seemed to taunt him with the normalcy they once represented. The late nights he'd spent at the office, badges of dedication, now felt like missed opportunities to reconnect with Emily. Regret gnawed at him, a constant companion. One evening, he stumbled upon a box tucked away in the back of their closet. Inside, nestled amongst faded photographs and dusty travel souvenirs, was a collection of love letters he'd written to Emily during their college years. Each one, filled with soaring declarations and youthful promises, was a stark contrast to the cold reality of their present. He spent the night rereading them, a bittersweet smile tugging at his lips. The passion, the innocence, had it all faded away, replaced by the comfort of routine? Or had it been buried alive under the weight of unspoken needs and a fear of rocking the boat? He found himself phoning his best friend, John. John, with his ever-present optimism and blunt honesty, was the one person Mark felt he could truly confide in. They talked for hours, dissecting the wreckage of their marriage, exploring every facet of blame, regret, and a flicker of hope for reconciliation. "Don't make decisions from a place of hurt, Mark," John cautioned. "Give yourself time to breathe, then figure out what you truly want." Mark took John's advice. He started seeing a therapist, seeking to understand the emotional disconnect that had festered in their marriage. He learned about the dangers of complacency, the importance of communication, and the delicate dance of maintaining individuality within a partnership. Meanwhile, Emily returned from her sister's. The once vibrant home now felt cavernous, the air thick with unspoken tension. They spoke in clipped sentences, navigating around the elephant in the room. One evening, after a particularly strained dinner, Emily broke the silence. "I went to see David," she confessed, her voice a mere whisper. "Just to talk, to understand what I'd almost done." Relief and a flicker of anger warred within Mark. And there's nothing there," she continued. "Just a temporary escape from the reality of our marriage." Tears welled up in her eyes. "Mark, I miss us. The laughter, the shared dreams. I was scared of admitting that we needed to change." They talked again, this time with a fragile honesty that had been missing for years. They spoke of their fears, their frustrations, their unspoken desires. They admitted their faults, their contributions to the erosion of their love. It wasn't easy. There were arguments, outbursts of hurt and anger, but slowly, a new understanding began to blossom. They started small, rediscovering the joy in shared meals, in taking walks together, in simply talking, without judgment or blame. They revisited their old haunts, the restaurants they frequented during their dating years, the park where they shared their first kiss. The journey towards rebuilding trust was a long and arduous one. There were moments of doubt, triggers that threatened to send them reeling back into the abyss of distrust. But they held on to the embers of love they rediscovered, using them to reignite the warmth that had once defined their relationship. They decided to try couples therapy, a neutral space to navigate the complexities of their situation. The therapist, a woman with kind eyes and a calming voice, helped them communicate more effectively, to address their needs without resorting to blame or criticism. One evening, as they sat on their porch swing, watching the fireflies dance in the twilight, Emily surprised Mark. "Remember that trip to Italy we always dreamt of?" she asked. He chuckled, a genuine laugh that resonated within him. "Yeah, the one with the gondola rides and the endless pasta courses. What if we booked it, just us, like we always planned?" He looked at her, a flicker of hope igniting in his chest. "Are you sure you're ready for that?" She reached for his hand, her touch sending a familiar warmth through him. "I think we both are," she replied, her eyes mirroring his newfound optimism. The trip to Italy wasn't a cure-all. The cracks in their marriage were still visible, but they were no longer chasms threatening to swallow them whole. They were scars, reminders of the past, and testaments to their resilience. They walked hand in hand through the bustling streets of Rome, the cobblestones whispering stories of 1,000 years. Gone were the tense silences from their home. Their conversations flowed easily, punctuated by laughter and shared observations. In Venice, gliding down canals in a gondola, a closeness enveloped them they hadn't felt in years. They spoke of the future, not with grand pronouncements, but with a quiet confidence. Maybe they couldn't build the exact future they'd envisioned years ago, but they were building something new, something stronger, forged in the fires of adversity. Back home, the routine felt different. It wasn't just about shared tasks, it was a conscious effort to connect, to create new memories. They started a tradition of date nights in, where they cook a fancy meal together, light candles, and just talk. They dusted off their old board games, the competitive spirit reignited with playful jabs and teasing laughter. One evening, amidst a particularly heated Scrabble game, Emily confessed, "I think I understand why you were so hurt, Mark." Not just by the affair, but by the years of neglecting each other. Mark nodded, guilt flickering in his eyes. Me too. I was so focused on work, on maintaining stability, that I forgot to nurture our love. They spoke of their dreams, not the shared ones they'd abandoned, but the dreams they'd each held on to silently. Emily confessed her desire to open a small bookstore, a haven for bibliophiles like herself. Mark admitted his longing to travel the world, not for business, but for exploration and adventure. They sat in silence for a while, the weight of their unspoken desires hanging in the air. Then Mark spoke. "What if we could compromise? You open your bookstore, but maybe we take a trip every year, a chance to explore together." Emily's eyes lit up. That could work. It wasn't perfect. There were moments of hesitation, anxieties about the unknown. But they faced them together, drawing strength from the rediscovered bond. Emily found a charming storefront, its old brick walls and creaky floorboards holding the promise of countless stories. Mark started planning their first trip together, a trek through the lush jungles of Costa Rica. The bookstore opening was a success. Surrounded by towering shelves of books, Emily, radiating warmth and passion, was in her element. Mark, albeit a bit out of his comfort zone, enjoyed mingling with the customers, his eyes finding Emily's whenever possible. That night, celebrating with a glass of wine at their favorite restaurant, Emily leaned in and whispered, "Thank you, Mark, for believing in us, for believing in me." Their trip to Costa Rica was an adventure etched in vibrant colors. They trekked through dense rainforests, swam in emerald green pools, and marveled at the symphony of life surrounding them. In the evenings, they huddled in their cozy cabin, sharing stories and dreams under the star-studded sky. Coming back home felt like returning to a familiar, yet different space. The bookstore had become an extension of their home, a welcoming haven filled with the scent of old paper and brewing coffee. Their evenings were now a delightful mix of literary discussions with their newfound bookstore friends and planning their next adventure. Years passed, each one a testament to their commitment to rebuild. The scars remained, but they were no longer raw and painful. They were a reminder of their past, a symbol of their resilience and the enduring power of love. They didn't have the picture-perfect life they once imagined, but they had a life they had built together, a life filled with laughter, shared dreams, and the unwavering promise to continue growing, side by side. One evening, as they sat on their porch swing, the fireflies putting on a dazzling display, Emily reached for Mark's hand. "Remember when we thought everything was over?" she asked. He squeezed her hand, a warm smile gracing his lips. "It felt pretty darn close. But we made it back," she continued, her voice filled with quiet pride. "We rebuilt something stronger, something more authentic." Mark looked at her, the woman who was his best friend, his lover, his partner in this journey called life. "We sure did," he replied, pulling her close as they watched the fireflies paint the night sky with their magical glow. They knew there would be challenges in the future, but they also knew they would face them together, hand in hand, their love a beacon guiding them through any storm.